Television has a way of growing up with us. Familiar faces filled our living rooms, shaped our evenings, and quietly became part of our memories. But behind the iconic roles, the laugh tracks, and the standing ovations, some stars were building something far more lasting than fame. While careers rose and trends faded, a few chose stability over spectacle, partnership over headlines, and love that aged slowly out of frame. These are not fairy tales. They are real relationships that survive time, pressure, and the unpredictable rhythm of Hollywood. Tonight, we look back at 10 beloved television icons and the partners who stood beside them then and now. For generations of television viewers, Dick Van Dyke represented a rare kind of joy. His career spanned decades, from groundbreaking sitcoms to musical performances that redefined physical comedy on screen. Shows like The Dick Van Dyke Show turned him into a household name, while his work in film and television cemented his status as one of the most beloved entertainers of the 20th century. Even as trends changed, his image remained tied to optimism, warmth, and a kind of humor that felt timeless rather than dated. What made his legacy unusual was not just longevity, but consistency. While many careers faded quietly, Dick continued to appear, perform, and surprise audiences well into later life. Awards, standing ovations, and cultural recognition followed him. Yet he never seemed consumed by the pressure to stay relevant. Instead, he carried his fame lightly, as if it were something he visited rather than lived inside. It was during this slower, steadier phase of life that he met Arlene Silver, a former makeup artist whose world existed far from Hollywood's spotlight. Their connection did not emerge from shared ambition or industry power, but from companionship and ease. She was not chasing reinvention, and he was no longer searching for validation. They married in 2012, drawing attention for their age difference, but refusing to let it define them. Rather than performing happiness for cameras, they built a life shaped by music, routine, and quiet humor. Dick often speaks about laughter as the foundation of their bond, while Arlene emphasizes balance and presence over image. Public attention quickly shifted toward their age difference, bringing speculation and judgment that neither of them invited. Instead of responding or explaining themselves, they chose silence. No statements, no defenses. They continued living as they always had, letting daily routine and shared rhythm speak for them. Their relationship stands as a reminder that not all challenges arrive as tragedy. Some come as noise, and sometimes the strongest response is simply continuing forward, unchanged. To many viewers, Eugene Levy was never just a comedian. He was the familiar face you instinctively trusted, the quiet presence who could turn discomfort into warmth with a single look. Long before Schitt's Creek reshaped his public image, his career had already been built on consistency, subtlety, and an ability to feel human rather than performative. His rise was never explosive, and that became his strength. Through sketch comedy, sitcoms, and supporting roles, Eugene carved out a reputation as someone studios relied on and audiences welcomed. When Schitt's Creek finally arrived, it did more than elevate his career. It reframed it. Late recognition brought awards, global attention, and a new generation of fans. Yet none of it seemed to change how he carried himself. That grounded quality did not appear overnight. Long before fame found him again, Eugene built a private life with Deborah Devine, a writer and producer whose work stayed mostly behind the scenes. They married in 1977 and made a deliberate choice to raise their family in Toronto, far from Hollywood's constant noise. Their home life valued routine, humor, and presence over visibility. As Eugene's profile grew later in life, Deborah remained a steady anchor rather than a public counterpart. She continued her creative work quietly, while protecting the balance they had established years earlier. In interviews, Eugene often points back to family as the reason success never distorted his sense of self. Their marriage is rarely described as dramatic or glamorous. Instead, it stands as something far rarer in entertainment culture, a partnership that never needed reinvention. It simply endured, steady enough to hold both obscurity and acclaim without losing its shape. Alan Alda became a presence audiences invited into their homes week after week. As Hawkeye Pierce on MASH, he helped redefine what television could do, blending humor, vulnerability, and moral reflection at a time when sitcoms rarely slowed down to ask deeper questions. His performance turned a war comedy into one of the most influential series in television history, earning awards, cultural respect, and a lasting place in American storytelling. What set Alan apart was not just talent, but intention. He wrote, directed, and shaped episodes that felt personal rather than manufactured. Even as fame expanded, his public image remained thoughtful, approachable, and deeply human. Viewers did not just laugh with him, they listened. Long after MASH ended, his voice continued through films, books, and advocacy focused on empathy and meaningful communication. Away from the spotlight, that same clarity defined his personal life. Long before success could complicate things, Alan met Arlene Weiss, a photographer with her own creative path and quiet confidence. They married in 1957, at a time when his career was still uncertain and the future unwritten. Their partnership formed before applause ever arrived. Later in life, their marriage faced a quieter but more demanding challenge. As Alan began living with Parkinson's disease, everyday rhythms shifted. Simple routines required adjustment, patience, and constant awareness. Arlene did not step forward as a public symbol, but as a companion adapting alongside him, reshaping daily life without allowing illness to redefine their bond. Reflecting on their relationship, Alan once said, "I always say my wife Arlene and I grew up together. We learned how to be adults side by side." Their marriage was never built on spectacle. It endured through shared growth, calm resilience, and the willingness to meet change together. Betty White was never just a television star. She was television. Her career stretched across game shows, sitcoms, talk shows, and late-life pop culture resurgence in a way no one else managed. From early live broadcasts to the Golden Girls, she became a symbol of wit, resilience, and timing so precise it felt effortless. Even as decades passed, audiences never tired of her presence. If anything, they leaned in closer. What made Betty remarkable was not only longevity, but adaptability. She moved with television as it evolved, never clinging to a single era. Awards followed, tributes piled up, and a new generation embraced her late-life revival with the same affection as those who had watched her from the beginning. Yet behind the humor and public charm, her private life followed a much quieter rhythm. That rhythm centered around Alan Ludden, a respected game show host whose life mirrored Betty's values rather than her fame. They met while working in television and married in 1963, at a time when both were already established, but not consumed by their careers. Their marriage was built on companionship, shared curiosity, and an everyday normalcy that fame never interrupted. Betty often spoke of Alan as the great love of her life. In one interview, she said, "Once you've had the best, who needs the rest?" It was not a line delivered for effect, but a reflection of how deeply she felt his absence after his passing in 1981. She never remarried, choosing instead to protect what that love had meant. Their story is not defined by tragedy, but by completeness. Betty carried her joy, humor, and independence forward, shaped by a partnership that had already given her everything it needed to. Bob Newhart built a career on understatement. In a television landscape often driven by volume and exaggeration, his comedy did the opposite. With calm delivery, pauses that carried meaning, and a deadpan style that trusted the audience to listen, he became one of the most distinctive voices in television history. From the Bob Newhart Show to Newhart, his work defined an era of intelligent, character-driven comedy that aged gracefully rather than loudly. What made Bob's success unusual was its steadiness. He did not chase reinvention or spectacle. Instead, his humor evolved quietly, earning respect across generations. Awards arrived, critical praise followed, and younger audiences later rediscovered him through guest appearances that reminded everyone how timeless restraint could be. Through it all, his public image remained consistent, thoughtful, dry, and deeply human. Behind that calm exterior was a personal life built on the same principles. Long before television fame reshaped his routine, Bob met Ginny Quinn, a woman whose presence grounded him rather than competed with his career. They married in 1963, early in his rise, and quickly established a home life that prioritized normalcy over industry chaos. Ginny chose to stay largely out of the spotlight, focusing on family and the quiet structure that allowed Bob to work without losing balance. Together, they raised 4 children and later welcomed grandchildren, building a life measured in decades rather than headlines. In interviews, Bob often credited his marriage for keeping him centered, once saying, "I'm lucky. I married the right person, and that makes everything else easier." Their relationship never became a public storyline, and that was by design. It reflected a partnership built on patience, mutual respect, and shared humor. In an industry defined by change, Bob and Ginny's marriage stands as proof that stability, when chosen early and protected carefully, can last longer than any punchline. Mark Harmon became a symbol of quiet authority on television. Early in his career, he moved easily between drama and action, earning recognition for performances that felt controlled rather than flashy. That steady presence eventually found its most enduring form on NCIS, where his role as Leroy Jethro Gibbs turned him into one of the most recognizable faces in modern television. For years, the show dominated ratings, and Mark's restrained, disciplined performance became its emotional backbone. What distinguished his success was restraint. While fame grew louder around him, Mark remained famously private, rarely leaning into celebrity culture or publicity. His career thrived without constant reinvention, built instead on reliability and trust. Audiences believed him, networks depended on him, and yet, he consistently kept his personal life out of frame. That separation was intentional. Long before NCIS turned him into a household name, Mark met actress Pam Dauber, beloved in her own right for her role on Mork and Mindy. They married in 1987, choosing a life that valued privacy over exposure. At a time when dual celebrity marriages often became public narratives, they quietly stepped back. Pam made the conscious decision to slow her acting career to focus on family, while Mark did the same when it came to publicity. Together, they raised 2 sons and kept their home largely untouched by Hollywood's noise. Mark has rarely spoken publicly about their relationship, but when he has, the sentiment is clear. He once shared, "We stay home. A lot. I'm not a Twitter guy or a Facebook guy. Neither are our sons." Their marriage has never relied on spectacle, public declarations, or reinvention arcs. Instead, it reflects a shared agreement to protect what matters most. In an industry that often rewards exposure, Mark and Pam chose boundaries. Their story stands as a reminder that some of the strongest partnerships are not the ones we know most about, but the ones carefully kept out of sight, allowed to grow without interruption. Ed O'Neill built a career on characters that felt larger than life, yet strangely familiar. For many viewers, he will always be Al Bundy, a role that turned Married with Children into one of the most recognizable sitcoms of its era. Decades later, his portrayal of Jay Pritchett on Modern Family revealed a very different strength, proving his range and securing his place across 2 generations of television history. What made Ed's trajectory unusual was patience. Success did not come overnight, nor did it follow a single path. He moved from comedy to reinvention without chasing relevance, allowing time and craft to do the work. Awards, renewed visibility, and late career respect followed naturally, without the need for spectacle. Away from the screen, his life followed a far quieter pattern. Ed met actress Catherine Russoff early in his career, and after marrying in 1986, they experienced a period of separation that forced distance and reflection. It was a moment handled privately, without explanation or public narrative. When they chose to reunite, priorities were clearer. Catherine stepped back from acting, while Ed embraced a more disciplined approach to work and home. Together, they raised 2 daughters and built a life protected from industry noise. Catherine chose to step away from acting, while Ed balanced his demanding career with a disciplined personal routine. Together, they raised 2 daughters and built a home life centered on structure and stability. Speaking about his marriage, Ed once said, "My wife and kids keep me grounded. Nothing matters more than that." It was a simple statement, but one that revealed how intentionally he separated work from home. What defines their story is not perfection, but commitment. In an industry that rarely celebrates second chances done quietly, Ed and Catherine's marriage shows how clarity, discipline, and shared priorities can turn early missteps into lasting balance. Tom Selleck became one of television's most recognizable leading men without ever chasing excess. His breakthrough as Magnum on Magnum. P.I. turned him into a symbol of relaxed confidence, blending charm, humor, and physical presence in a way that felt effortless. The role dominated television throughout the 1980s and made Tom a household name, while later work on Blue Bloods extended his relevance well into a new era of viewers. What set Tom apart was his instinct to step back at critical moments. At the height of Magnum, P.I., when momentum seemed unstoppable, he made the unexpected choice to slow down. Instead of stacking projects, he prioritized control over his time and career direction. That decision reshaped how audiences perceived him, not just as a star, but as someone willing to trade speed for sustainability. That same instinct guided his personal life. Tom met British actress and dancer Gilly Mack after seeing her perform in Cats in London. Their connection was immediate but unhurried, rooted in curiosity rather than celebrity overlap. They married in 1987 and soon after relocated away from Hollywood's center, settling on a ranch in California that reflected their shared desire for space and quiet. Gilly chose to step away from public performance, while Tom adjusted his work schedule to protect home life. Together, they raised their daughter with a level of privacy that became increasingly rare in entertainment culture. Reflecting on that balance, Tom once said, "I quit Magnum to have a family. It took me a long time to get off the train, but I'm very happy I did." Until now, Tom and Gilly built a partnership that allowed both career and family to exist without competition. Their marriage stands as proof that stepping back can sometimes be the most enduring move of all. Angela Lansbury carried a kind of authority that felt both elegant and reassuring. Long before she became synonymous with murder, she wrote. Her career had already crossed film, theater, and television with remarkable range. From classic Hollywood roles to Broadway performances that earned critical acclaim, she built a reputation rooted in discipline, intelligence, and longevity. When she stepped into the role of Jessica Fletcher, audiences found more than a character. They found a presence that felt wise, composed, and deeply trustworthy. What made Angela's success distinctive was balance. She navigated fame without allowing it to eclipse her private priorities. While Murder, she wrote, turned her into one of the most recognizable faces on television, she consistently chose projects that fit her life, rather than reshaping her life around work. That sense of proportion became one of her quiet strengths. Away from the camera, her most enduring partnership was with producer Peter Shaw. They married in 1949, early in her career, and built a life that moved fluidly between England and the United States. Peter was not just a husband, but a collaborator and protector, someone who understood both the demands of the industry and the importance of distance from it. As Angela's career intensified, Peter focused on safeguarding their family life, especially during difficult periods involving their children. In interviews later in life, Angela spoke openly about that support, once saying, "Peter was my anchor. He gave me the stability that allowed me to work without losing myself." It was a reflection not of romance as spectacle, but of partnership as structure. They spent more than 5 decades together, weathering fame, relocation, and personal challenges with unity rather than drama. When Peter passed away in 2003, Angela continued forward with grace, shaped by a marriage that had already given her resilience. Their story remains a reminder that longevity in love often mirrors longevity in craft. Both require patience, commitment, and the willingness to choose steadiness over applause. Julia Louis-Dreyfus built a career defined by precision. From Seinfeld to Veep, she shaped some of the most iconic female characters in television history, earning record-breaking awards and a reputation for comedic control that rarely missed a beat. Her performances were sharp, confident, and fearless, helping redefine what leading women in comedy could be. Few actors managed to dominate multiple eras of television the way she did, and even fewer did so without repeating themselves. What made Julia's success especially striking was how grounded it remained. Despite constant recognition and cultural influence, she never leaned into celebrity excess. Instead, her work reflected discipline and preparation, a sense that excellence came from craft rather than chaos. That same steadiness extended beyond the screen. Long before fame reached its peak, Julia met Brad Hall while they were both students at Northwestern University. He shared her creative instincts but followed a quieter path as a writer and director. They married in 1987, before awards, before headlines, and before public pressure could shape expectations. Their partnership grew alongside their careers, not because of them. Brad remained largely out of the spotlight, focusing on writing, directing, and family life, while Julia navigated an increasingly visible career. Together, they raised 2 sons and faced challenges that fame never shields, including serious health scares that tested resilience rather than image. Reflecting on their marriage, Julia once said, "I married someone who makes me laugh and who I deeply respect. That has mattered more than anything else." Their relationship was never built as a public narrative. It did not rely on reinvention arcs or perfect optics. Instead, it matured quietly, grounded in humor, respect, and shared history. As Julia's career continued to evolve, that foundation remained unchanged. Their story closes this journey with a simple truth. Lasting love does not compete with success. When built early and protected intentionally, it grows strong enough to hold it. In a world where short-lived romances often feel like the norm, these stories remind us that something quieter still exists. Away from headlines and expectations, some relationships were built slowly, protected carefully, and allowed to grow without needing constant attention. Behind familiar faces and long-running careers were lives shaped by routine, compromise, and presence. Not every journey was smooth. Some faced judgment, illness, distance, or difficult choices that asked for patience rather than performance. What carried them forward was not perfection, but commitment made in ordinary moments. Looking back, it becomes clear that lasting love in television was never about avoiding struggle. It was about choosing steadiness while everything else changed, about building a life that could outlast both success and silence. So which story stayed with you the most? And is there another television icon whose journey you would like us to explore next?